Do you wish you could think less about food throughout the day, to have your nutritional habits on autopilot? It's a tough situation to find yourself in, but the solution is probably not what you think. In fact, an often cited study from 2010 states that food thought suppression actually predicted binge eating, food cravings, and other disordered eating symptoms. So if we can't just push down and ignore our feelings about food, what can we do? We'll go over half a dozen different ways to approach the situation, tactics that we use in our Nerd Fitness online coaching program to help guide people through the confusing and often exhausting world of nutrition in a fun and sustainable way. All that said, this video should not take the place of a professional. If you feel that you or a loved one is dealing with challenging food-related concerns, please see a registered dietitian. All right, let's take a look at some things that may help. First off, examine your long-held beliefs surrounding food. We all have certain things that we know about food, but they don't just pop into our head one day. For many of our beliefs about anything, it was something that was explicitly or implicitly taught to us when we were younger. Did you grow up in a situation where food was scarce? It's incredibly stressful, and you may be carrying that scarcity mindset forward into today, when food isn't scarce for you at all. Or did family members make disparaging remarks about certain foods or certain body types? We pick up a lot as kids and often repeat these things without even realizing it. Write down your food history and those often unspoken rules, just so you can really see them. This practice of reflecting back and realizing when and where you've learned those beliefs can be helpful to bring more awareness to the present and help us moving forward. Next up, stop labeling food as good or bad. Was one of your rules that certain foods were off limits or bad? We then feel like eating those bad foods is something we shouldn't do and get a lot of guilt whenever we do so. But food serves a lot of different purposes, and sometimes those more indulgent foods provide comfort or social bonding. That can be perfectly fine. Next time you find yourself applying morality to food, that it's good or bad, stop yourself. Take that automatic thought and reframe it. Express your intentions around your actions, that you're choosing to eat a particular food for a particular reason at a particular time. While this increased mindfulness around food feels like we're going in the opposite direction of thinking less about food, it actually helps us improve our relationship with the things we eat. Next, on the similar thought of good and bad foods, avoid shaming yourself for eating certain things. So often we'll have certain bad foods and then think we're a bad person overall and ask ourselves, why can't we do better? Or think that we just need more willpower because we're too weak. This self-imposed shame is exhausting and not even effective for establishing long-term habits. If being hard on yourself worked, it would have worked by now. And this cycle of eating certain foods, feeling shame about it, and then restricting yourself, it's a hamster wheel that we need to get off of. There seems to be a belief that you need to hate yourself to make a change, and it's just not true. Now, this doesn't mean you always have to like where you're at, and that may be the case for any number of things, from weight loss to your professional career, or perhaps one of your hobbies. But self-compassion has to be at the start of any lasting, sustainable change. So just like before, catch yourself during those negative self-talks, or reflect back on the last time you had them and reframe the story you're telling yourself. You are not a bad person for eating something. You are someone working hard to change your habits. You've come across some challenges, but you'll do the best you can. Next, let go of your unrealistic food restrictions. As we mentioned before, overly oppressive restrictions can cause a preoccupation with food. Now, this might be terrifying at first to let go of those restrictions and eat something you once put off limit. Do it bit by bit though, and check in with yourself on how you feel. Also, look for an additive approach to fitness. Instead of don't eat this, don't eat that, what can we add to our eating? Are we hydrated enough? Are we getting a variety of fruits and vegetables? How about some sources of solid lean protein? This mindset can be a complete turnaround from what you're used to hearing in the fitness world. And also on the topic of restriction. How long have you been on a diet? Cutting calories and restricting yourself? Undereating should not be something we do for months and months at a time. Diet should not be a constant lifestyle. In fact, in another study done on soldiers at the end of World War II, it was shown that severe food restriction made the soldiers think about food constantly during that starvation period and then later when they were recovering. Bringing calories up a bit to give yourself a physical and psychological rest from restriction could be another viable option. It's not for everyone, but Megan and her Nerd Fitness coach had a discussion and decided they wanted to try it. Before joining our program, she had been on a low-calorie diet for an extended period of time. She was hitting a wall and getting frustrated. Instead of continuing to do more of the same, Megan and her coach changed course and slowly added calories little by little. Calories that would fuel her adventures and help her feel better. And while the before and after pictures grab your attention, it's what Megan said about her energy that was really surprising. She said, "This is a allowed me to wake up every morning and work out, something I never used to do before. So if constant and long-term restrictions are causing you stress, getting you nowhere, and keeping you obsessed over food, the best option may be going in the other direction. Next, look for comfort in other ways. If food is your only source of stress management and comfort, and you heavily restrict it, then of course you'll think about it all the time. Instead, explore other options that may help. Going on a walk or getting in exercise. We've also seen success with journaling, meditation, or focusing on an enriching hobby. And now others might find food as a source of control, and it's comforting to have that control, especially when you might not feel it in other parts of your life. If you've tried other methods of stress relief but still turn back to food for control, then it might again be worth talking to a professional to help you process things and give you other tools to cope. We've just looked into some of the heavier underlying mindsets that might have us thinking about food all the time. Let's look at some of the quicker, less complicated tactics that may also help too. Look to establish a regular meal schedule. If you're eating around the same time each day and on the weekends, then your eating becomes habitual. If your schedule is a little bit more predictable, you'll need less thought about it. Bulk cook your meals. If you're cooking or buying each and every meal, it can take up a lot of mental bandwidth to decide what to get. If you've made a few meals ahead of time, that's a few less decisions you have to make that week. On a similar note, look to cook just a few options. In your bulk cooking, you might cook and prep a few protein sources, a few veggie options, a few carb and fat options, and then you can create different combinations of all those ingredients for your meals to help you worry less about food, but also stave off boredom with your eating options. So in tackling the question of how to think less about food, we've realized we were only thinking about the symptoms. The root cause is often our relationship with food and with ourselves. By becoming aware and mindfully approaching these things with self-compassion and without shame, guilt, or judgment, we realize that the initial question isn't even relevant anymore. It's a tough road to travel to get there, but worth the effort. All the best on your journey.